Stephen here for Bland Designs and Class Act, and today this is my art journaling class number 4. And what we're going to be looking at this time is using Geliplate monoprints and art foamies to create some backgrounds for this particular double page layout. Now, if you're not familiar with Geliplate printing is a form of monoprinting, meaning you can only get one print that's unique each time, using the silicone pad with paint spread across it, and you use your stencils over top of it to create various designs. And here are some examples on deli paper that I've created using my Geliplates. I also used something called art foamies, and art foamies are big foam rubber stamps that work really well with acrylic paint, and I stamped these on top of my Geliplate prints. So you can see you can get quite a variety. Now the thing about Geliplate printing and using the art foamies is that it's extremely addictive, and so you just never know when to stop. So I've made an awful lot of pieces here, and I'm not going to use all these pieces today. But once you get started, as I said, you can't stop. And that's also the reason why I haven't shown this process on the video for today. But down below in the notes there will be a link to some videos that show you how to do Geliplate printing, and also some links to art foamies as well, so you can find out about them. They're a lot of fun. So what's my plan for this art journal class? Not really sure. Never am. It's always an experiment. You never know what's going to happen. But I think I'm going to start out by creating a background that we're going to put strips of these on top of. So what I've already done is I've pre-gessoed 2 pages in my art journal, and I've pulled out this particular background rubber stamp. This comes from Indigo Blue. I haven't used this one yet, thus why it's in Primo style here, no marks on it whatsoever. And I'm going to use a permanent ink to start with, a waterproof ink. So I'm going to use StazOn, but you could use StazOn, or you could also use, oops, I'm throwing it across the room. You could use Ranger's Archival ink as well, because when it dries, it's permanent and waterproof as well. Why waterproof? Because this is our first layer, and we're going to put wet layers on top of this, and we don't want this ink to smear. And what I'm going to try to do here is create a background that, when I lay the deli paper over top of it, that background is going to sort of appear through the deli paper. Now, my theory is that deli paper, once it hits matte medium, is very translucent. And so we'll see how this works. This is an experiment. Not sure how it's going to work out, so here we go. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I'm using StazOn, and I'm going to ink up my pad. I suppose if you want to use colored ink, you could, but I'm just going to try it with black. And I'm going to cover this whole background page with these. I am putting more ink on between each stamp because I want this to be fairly dark. But again, if I don't get a perfect image, like I'm not getting a perfect image here in this area, that's not really going to bother me. And I'm letting the patterns overlap. That's okay too. I'm pressing down pretty firmly on here because I want to get as dark of an impression as I possibly can. Again, my theory is that if this is dark enough, well, that one isn't. Blew that one completely, but that's okay. I'll just go over it. My theory is that if this is dark enough, it will show up through the deli paper layer once I get that on. Well, what's going on here? It's not taking the ink. I don't know why. I'm not going to worry about it. Maybe because the angle I'm trying to stamp at. Now I suppose I could have done this step too I could have maybe avoided using the gesso, but I find that the gesso just allows your inks and your paints and anything else to stay more on the surface, not get too absorbed into your paper. Trying to get this pressed down really good into that. Yeah, you see there's a curve or something there, and it's not. So actually, I know what I'll do. I'll just finish this up first. Part of the problem too is because I have this on an acrylic base, and I think if I take it off the acrylic base, I'll just get these other bigger areas. Okay, so I'm going to take it off the acrylic pad and put it down here. Just move that down. I'm just going to ink up part of it, and I'm going to press it by hand in there. Yeah, that will work. So there's something. If you're not getting a good impression because of the curvature of your journal, just take it off the acrylic block, sort of bend it in. Yep, and that'll let me fill in these gaps that I missed before. So you know what would really look cool, maybe another time, is if you filled your whole background with a background rubber stamp like this, and then you could go in with your watercolor paints and color these in, and that would probably make a neat background as well. And I'm just filling in any gaps here that I see that are kind of obvious. And just one more up there, there's a little shadow. Okay, so that's good. So I'm going to clean up my ink pad here, or my rubber stamp, and then I'll come back and we'll do the next stage. Okay, for this next stage I chose a few of the pages that I'd already pre-printed using the Geliplates and the art foamies, and I don't know, I just selected these colors. I'm really not that concerned which colors go with what on here, and as I said, I'm going to tear these up and into strips, and I'm just going to apply them collage effect on top of this background, and I'm hoping that some of this, once this goes down, will show through. Now, I'm using, I was going to use gel matte medium, put the lid on this before I spill it, but I had read somewhere that if you have really thin paper, which is what this is, that you should use a more fluid matte medium. You can get this in a fluid style, and that's what I have right here, because it spreads easier, I guess. I'm not really sure what the philosophy was behind it, but I do know that gel matte medium tends to be a little bit more sticky and it's thicker, and when you're working with paper that is a little bit more delicate, that it tends to stick to it before you even get stuck down to the page. So I'm going to try the fluid matte medium, see how that works. And you can see it's very fluid. Okay, and I'm going to use one of the Tim Holtz collage brushes. These come in a pack of 3 different sizes. I have them here. There's a large one, a small one, and I'm going to use the medium-sized one. And you know what? I'm really liking these. They wash up very well. They're good quality bristles in them, so you're not getting hairs out of your brush onto what you're sticking down. So let's see. Let's take some of this, and I'm just going to tear a strip. And now I've got a lot of white space around the edge because that's how it came out, and I don't want that much white space, so I'm just going to tear white space off. And I'm just taking a little bit from each one, and I'm not too concerned about the size. I'm just throwing them down here. This is not necessarily where they're going to go, but I'm just getting a variety of pieces here. And I don't know, maybe I need a piece of yellow up here. Okay, so let's just see what happens. So I'm just going to take this, dip it in. You can see how runny it is. I'm going to apply it directly to my page. Oops, a little splatter there, almost got the computer. And yeah, my theory that this would show through is actually doing so. Whoa, gotta be careful with this. Flips it all over the place. This is very, very runny. But it does go on very smoothly too. I'm really not thinking about where I'm laying these down. And actually, you don't really have to worry too much if you got a little bit of a border that's not printed, like this piece right here, because it seems to blend right in. Now, I'm noticing something. Somehow, I don't know why, it might have been when I printed the Geliplate, but I got some yellow happening in here. But I'm not going to worry about that. It's come off of something, but the only thing is I don't want to contaminate my matte medium, so I better be careful. You could pour this out into another cup or whatever. I'm going to live dangerously and not do that. Kind of liking the effect though that's happening here. I think too what I read about using this with thinner paper, the thinner matte medium keeps your paper from wrinkling a little bit more, and I'm finding that with this, that my paper really is going down very smooth. I'm not having to push out air bubbles. Oops. Seem to be getting the discoloration from the yellow. I must have used I can't remember when I did this. I must have used a yellow paint or a yellow ink pad maybe, because I did use some ink pads on these too, and that couldn't have been a waterproof one, and so the color's coming off. But again, I'm not worried about that. This is just a background layer. And I think I need a little something up at the top over here. Now, just having said that it didn't wrinkle, that one did. But again, that's just texture. You know, I'm having a lot of fun doing this. Pull off another little strip here. Yeah. I'm going to add some more. I'm going to maybe find different. How about this? We'll take a little piece of this. Different color on here, a little green. Gives it a little pop there. A couple of wrinkles up there too, but not as wrinkly as it would be if I was using the heavier gel matte medium. So like I said, what I heard was that the thicker the paper, the thicker the medium should be. I guess that makes sense. Okay, do I need any? I think I need a little piece down here in this corner. Need any more? Maybe just a little piece up in this other corner here. You know, I can't really stop. I'm going to put a little bit more up in here. I'm sorry if I'm going off screen. I get so carried away doing this I forget that I'm new in the video. And I think a little piece down here. And maybe a little piece of green over there. Okay, I'm going to call it quits at this point. So, I'm going to let this dry. Don't throw out your scraps. Keep those. Future projects. I'm going to go away, clean up my mess here a little bit, because you don't want this to dry into your brush. So you want to clean that up as quick as possible. Hit this with the heat gun, and then we'll be back. And we continue with our experiment here. We've got 2 layers down now for a background. I want to sort of fill in some of the gaps, maybe tie in the deli paper with the stamped background. And I think I'm going to use a stencil for this, and a couple of colors from my Geliplate palette. And I've picked the green, and I've picked a yellow. And the stencil I'm going to use is a star, and the reason I'm using the star is really because, I don't know if you can notice it down here, but in a couple of spots I used star shapes when I printed with the deli paper, so I just thought I'd continue that motif. And I've got a Tim Holtz stars stencil here, the THS008, and I like it because it's got the various sizes. So I'm going to give this a little bit of a spray with a repositionable spray here, because I like to do that when I'm using a wet medium. It just holds the edges down a little better, and I'm just going to apply it up here to the top. Smooth. And I've put my ink on some palette paper, but you could do this on a piece of wax paper or directly onto your nonstick craft sheet. And I've grabbed a couple of makeup sponges, and I'm just going to dab on, dab off a little paint here, and just apply it through my stencil. And I'm going to do the same with the yellow. Not putting it on very thickly. And if I miss certain parts on the stencil, that's really not going to bother me. I'm just trying to tie the elements together. And let's do a reveal here and see what we've got. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. It's subtle, but it's there. And I think I'm just going to continue. I might try putting the paint on a little bit thicker. Just to see what happens here. And if my colors get a little mixed, that's all right. Let's see how this works out. Yeah, putting on a little thicker works a little better, and I think I'll go up here. I think I need some more paint. Oops, I'll just leave the cap off for now on that. I better put it on. These things tend to dry out quick. If you wanted to go really thick, you could apply it with a palette knife and kind of scrape it through, I suppose. That's something for me to try in the future. I'm not going to do that with this. Okay, that's not looking too bad. So carry on to this page. And there goes my clock. And what would one of my videos be if you didn't hear my clock going off in the background? I swear, every video I've ever made, that happens. I need a little bit more paint. Oops. Well, okay. That's one way of getting it out. Okay, I don't know if this is showing up on camera or not, but it's kind of subtle. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off camera, dry this with the heat gun and clean up my stencil, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I went off camera and I added some texture to this, and I intended to videotape this part of it, and I got so carried away doing this that I forgot to turn on the camera. But you know how to do this. I'm just going to walk you through it. I took my stencil, I took the star stencil again, the same as I had last time, and I grabbed some texture paste. Now this is the Ranger texture paste. You can use molding paste or modeling paste, whichever you happen to have. And I happen to use the one that's got a glossy finish to it. But that's not necessary for this. I thought I'd like to give this a little bit of a shine. And so I thought, well, what if I take this and I mix this with a little like diamond stickles to give it some sparkle? And then I thought, no, that's not going to give me enough there. So then what I thought, well, I'm just going to put some acrylic paint in it. And so I did. I chose black because my palette is fairly light in color and I wanted some contrast here. So I mixed in a little black acrylic paint in with some of my texture paste. And I just did that on a piece of wax paper off to the side, mixed it in well with a palette knife, and then I put my stencil down, and I had sprayed it with some of this repositionable spray. You've seen me use it before, just to hold down the edges of my stencil, and I just smoothed it over the stencil and then lifted it off to get this more of a textured effect. And I applied this like a border treatment, so I put a little bit up in each corner of my page just to kind of frame the page in a little bit. Then I'm going to hit this with the heat gun and let it dry, and then I'll be back with the next stage. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add an image to our pages. I've set my journal aside now so it can get a nice thorough drying while we're working on this stage. This is an image transfer technique, and what you need for this are a couple of pictures or something, a graphic element from a magazine. You're better to go with one that has a lot of dark areas in the picture itself, because in this transfer anything that's white is not going to really show up. And I'm not sure how well this is going to work, because given what I've just said about white areas, there are white areas in here, but I'm going to try this and see what it does. Now, you need some packing tape, just cheap packing tape that you can get at the dollar store. And what you're going to do is take your image, I'll use this one first, and you're just going to cover it in packing tape. So pull out a piece here. And you want to try to avoid wrinkles as much as possible. That's why it's good to have a non-stick craft sheet as well, because you can lay it right over the image and smooth it out. And smooth it out with your fingers, or you can take a credit card or a straight edge of some sort and just smooth it down really good. Make sure you don't have any air bubbles. And then, depending on the size of your image, take another piece and just slightly overlap it over the first piece. And again, smooth it down and get rid of any wrinkles or air bubbles. And then when you've got that, just peel it up flip it over and just trim the excess tape off. And if you've left a little bit of an allowance when you cut this out of your magazine, then you can just cut right into the page itself, and that makes it a little easier for cutting the tape away. Okay, just set that aside. And I think it's pretty obvious, but I'm putting the tape on the top of my image, okay, not the bottom. And I'm going to do the same thing with this piece. And I might be able to get away with just one piece on here. Yeah, I think I can. So that one covered in one piece. Smooth out the air bubbles. And then we're just going to trim this. And I'm going to trim off the excess white space on there. And the same down here. I don't want this one little line of type. It's down there. Okay, get these out of the way. Okay, now comes the fun part. You need a spritzer of water, just ordinary water. And again, this is good to do this on your craft mat, but if you want to be a little neater, take some paper towel and just lay that underneath. Now flip your image over so on the side that doesn't have the packing tape, and now you want to spritz a fair amount of water on this. Now depending on how thick the magazine page is will dictate how much water you need, and let it sit for a bit to soak in. And you'll see it soaking in because you notice on here color's changing, the other side is starting to transfer through. I'm just going to give it a little bit more water. This is why the paper towel, because the water runs off it. And then you might want to grab yourself a baby wipe. And just letting that water soak in. And then you're going to take your fingers, this is the fun part, and you're going to rub. And as you rub, and sort of go in a circular motion, the magazine paper that is soaked with the water is going to start to curl up and come off. Now don't rub too hard at first, you just want to get it going because you don't want to get rid of the image on the other side. But the image is actually sticking to the packing tape. Now this does take a little time. It's one reason why I said we did the background first on our pages and use some mediums that will take a while to dry because we've got some time. And you see your image will start to be revealed. Now, if you need to re-wet, and you probably will many times, because you're going to get some cloudiness, and you want to get rid of the cloudiness as well. So, give it another spritz. And you just keep working this. And you see the idea of the paper towel is that you can put all this stuff on it and it's going to be easy to clean up afterwards. And really, don't be stingy with your water. actually kind of fun to do this. So I find it kind of relaxing. So you're getting it all off, and you want to get as much of the little cloudy pieces there. You see it's still rolling up when I hit it with my finger. You want to get as much of that off as you can, because the more transparent this is going to become, because basically what you have is just the colored ink now on your packing tape. Now, this is where you take your baby wipe when you get down to this stage and just go over it, and that helps take off some of the foggy pieces. Just going to give it another little spritz here. Now, you got to be careful at this stage too, because you can start to rub off some of the ink. Now that will give you sort of a distressed look, and that's not bad, but depending on how much of that you want or don't want. There, I think I've got most of this off. So you pick it up. Look at that. Now when I lay that down on my background, the background's going to come through, but this is going to look like it's been actually printed right onto the background. So just take that, set it aside to dry. You can blot it a little bit with a paper towel. And I'm going to let this sit to the side for a moment to dry. It doesn't take long to dry. And this is where you can also see if there's some parts that are still got paper on them, a little cloudy. You can go back over it, spritz it again with your water, and get those off. But that's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to leave this over to dry here, and I'm going to go off camera, do my other piece, and we'll see how this one turns out, because I'm not sure. It's got a lot of white in it, so we'll see what happens with this. Okay, now that we have our transfers done, the paper removed from the back of them, it's time to lay them down to on our double page spread. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. Again, you can adhere these with matte medium. I'm going to use the fluid matte medium, but you could use the regular gel as well. And you just apply them the way you would any collage pieces. Now, here's one thing that you may find. Sometimes they're still sticky on the back, the tape. And if that's the case, still use your matte medium, because that sticky won't last very long. But that's normal. It will stay that way. And in fact, if you left these for a few days to sit and air dry, some of that stickiness might go away. If it really bothers you, you can run it over lint-free cloth a couple of times to get rid of that stickiness. But I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm just going to apply my matte medium to my page. And I'm going to use this one first because it's sticking to everything. And I'm just going to lay it down. Smooth it out. Again, you might want to use your old credit card or a old gift card and just smooth it into the paper, and you can see what happens here. It looks like it's actually been printed into the page itself. And then just do a coat of matte medium over the top of it just to seal it. And that's how we're going to put all our pieces on. So I'm going to put my big wine bottle over here. And be a little careful when you go over it with the old credit card, because it could... Oh, guess what I did? I put mine on upside down. Just notice that in the writing of the bottle. Not a big problem, because I'm going to cover it with matte medium anyways on the top of this. So there we go. Now if you have a few wrinkles in it, that's really not going to bother you too much. Okay, And let's put a little of this on the top. You know, it just wouldn't be a video if I didn't screw up on something, but this was a minor screw up. Just an opportunity for an embellishment, sort of a thing. Okay. And there we go. Now, I did a third piece off camera because I have a spot for it. Now I just have to decide where I want to put it. Some little wine glasses. Now, this is what I meant about white space. It's very difficult for you to see the way I'm holding it in there that there are stems on these glasses. And I debated whether to use it or not, but I think I will use it. It's just a question of where do I want to put it. Do I want to put it down here? It doesn't show up that well here. Or do I want to put it and kind of overlap it? I think I'm going to put it over here and I'm going to overlap it. Now, my wine glasses are kind of disappearing into the background. I was sort of afraid of that, but doesn't mean I'm beat on that. I'm going to leave them. And what I could do is when this dries, and I may do that, I could sort of outline the glasses using my white or black pens. We'll see once this dries. And see, I still got an air bubble right there. Okay, so I'm going to give this a dry. Okay, I've finished my 2-page spread, and the final stage of this, which took me a little while, was to add some pen work to this. And remember I told you over here that these glasses weren't showing up? What I did was I outlined them in a black marker pen first, a Fudball pen, and then I just went over that little highlight with my white Signal pen by Uniball. This is the best pen on the market as far as I'm concerned. It writes on almost any surface, and we've got a lot of layers here of like clear packing tape, which is a slick surface. There's fluid matte medium on here. There's all kinds of stuff, and this wrote on top of all these surfaces without any problem whatsoever. I also added a little detail with the white pen as well. In here I added a few little bubbles and things like that in my glasses, and I gave it a little some white lining down here just to ground it a bit. And then I didn't stop there. I sketched out around my wine bottle to make it pop a little bit more, and I did the same thing doing a shadowing technique with my title here to make that stand out a little bit too. And then once you get started with the doodling, you really can't stop, so I decided to outline some of the stars that we had stenciled on earlier to make those pop in various areas. And even on my textured paste black stars, I put a little white dot in the center of each one of those, again just to add some interest to the eye. When I got that all done, I was looking around and I had this space in the center here that was vacant. There was nothing there. Now, if you're a journaler, as in writing journaling, that would have been a great spot to write something, but you know that my handwriting, as far as I'm concerned, sucks, and I don't like to use it. I know I should, but I don't. So I happen to have a rubber stamp with some grape vine leaves on it, actually a small one and a little larger one. I just stamped them in stays on black ink right here into the center part, and then I took, and these are a really nice product, these are called Clean Color Real Brush Zig watercolor brush markers, and these are excellent. They're not cheap, but they're really nice color, and I just went over the grapes and the leaves, and the color did change because of what was underneath them, but I don't care about that. These are, because they're like a watercolor, color will seep through them, and that's okay. And I just used the black one to outline the vines that were in here as well, and I just sort of sketched those in. I didn't want them to be that pronounced. I just want to break up that center surface a little bit. So there we have it. So you've learned several new techniques, I think. You learned how to do some Geliplate printing and using your art foamies to create collage materials. You've also learned how to do a type of picture transfer technique using packing tape. And overall, I think this turned out not too bad. So until next time, bye-bye.